Do you need a mic?
All right, yes, thank you. Thank you, wow. I don't know how many of you, it was so exciting. By the way, thank you for having fireworks and a boat for my birthday. That was so fun. I appreciate that, AJ. I appreciate it. And where's Ken? It's Ken's birthday today. Is he here? Happy birthday to you, Ken. Everybody make sure that you say happy birthday to Ken as well. Yes, thank you. I don't know how many of you were here at the Circle Live event, but Nate introduced me at that event, and it's now one of my favorite stories. One of my favorite stories, because he came up right before, and I'm looking at my notes, and I'm like, I did my slides at the last second, just sliding in sideways. And he comes up to me right before, and he was like, I need to know what's the most interesting thing about you. So when I introduce you, and I'm like, blank. Well, what is interesting about me that is appropriate to share in a professional setting? I don't know. So I panicked, right? And I was like, okay, my daughter and I, we are huge Avengers nerds. Huge Avengers. I love the Avengers. And so I'm like, okay, I'm off the hook now. And he's like, no. Who's your favorite Avenger? Like, what do you mean, who's your favorite? Who's your favorite kid? You can't have a favorite Avenger, right? So I panicked, and he was like, no, I need your favorite Avenger right now. So I was like, I don't know, Iron Man. He's a billionaire. Everybody in here loves billionaires. It's Iron Man. I didn't say Scarlet Witch. I didn't say Black Widow, like these badass women. I said Iron Man. All right, that's fine. I love Iron Man. I'll stand by it. I get up there. I do my talk. Felt good. Went to the VIP party at AJ's house later, and one of the Inner Circle members comes up to me, and she was like, oh, my God, I love the Avengers, too, and how awesome that you dressed the part. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? She was like, you dress like Iron Man. And I think back, and I was wearing, who was there? Who was there? Do you remember what I was wearing? I was wearing a burgundy dress, leather burgundy dress, and gold shoes. I freaking dressed up like my favorite superhero for a professional event. So now I have to live with that for the rest of my life. So thank you for letting me relive that nightmare again. I'm so excited to be back here with you all, and I actually, if I couldn't be with my daughter, this is the next best place that I would have loved to spend my birthday, so thank you all. It's been amazing. And I got a chance to talk to a lot of you last year and in Boise, and then last night and yesterday. And the thing that I learned is that, you heard Pace talk yesterday, and you heard him talk about scaling your business. Right, and you heard him talk about what that means, and he said the best way to scale your business is to learn how to raise capital, and I agree with him. I do, of course. I'm the securities lawyer. I want you all to raise capital. But the thing I learned in talking to all of you is that you all have different definitions of what building your empire means to you. You all have different definitions of what scaling means for you, right? And you all have different definitions of what it means to be successful. But I think one thing we can all agree on here in this room is that this business that we've all chosen, real estate investing, self-storage investing, is the best way to create conscious capital. Would you agree with that? Yeah. And what does conscious capital mean to you? Christina, what does conscious capital mean to you? She's like, you didn't tell me you were going to call me out. Yes, intentional. That's exactly. Intentionally creating capital. And by the way, I just want to thank you all for being here after. I know a lot of you raged last night. So I appreciate you all being here. I think it probably helped that they served bacon first. That was helpful. And Cole came even though he didn't get bacon. But I do appreciate that. And I actually thought about maybe learning a magic trick or something to make this more exciting. You came to listen to the securities lawyer, and it's like, ugh. And then we had magic last night, and also I'm sort of the opposite of a magician, really. If you think about it, I'm the magician. He'll take something that's super simple and make it seem really complicated so that you're walking away going, what the heck just happened? And my job is exactly the opposite of that. My job is to take something really complicated and have you walking away going, oh, that's kind of simple. I get that. So no magic today, but I promise that I will try to teach you something. Is that fair? Okay, good. So I wanted to, what I'm going to teach you, though, and maybe this is magic, I don't know. What I'm going to teach you, though, is how to scale your business. And it's going to be how to scale your business using other people's everything, okay? How to scale your business without putting your own money in, without using your own technology, and maybe even not using a lot of your own resources at all. Just what it is you're amazing at and what it is that lights you up. All right. Is it go? Which one's go? The big green arrow is go. Very good. But why do I do this? Why do I do this? I love to travel. So you heard about the hotel in Belize. This gig and helping all of you create conscious wealth gives me the freedom to travel all over the world. It gives me the freedom to do fun things and buy boutique hotels and resorts. But really, my daughter, Mackenzie, my raison d'etre, and if she saw this slide, she'd be so pissed at me for putting pictures of her up here. So maybe don't post this stuff on social media where she can see it. And I do it because I know she's watching me. But I don't do it so that she's impressed by me or that she's in awe of me or thinks I'm some cool mom. I mean, I'm a cool mom, but so she does. I don't do this for that reason, right? I do it because I want her to look at me and to look at all the cool things that we can do together. And I want her to just say, well, yeah, that's what women do. And I want her to learn that. I want her to learn that all this is possible for her too. So she drives me to be able to do this with all of you. So I'm appreciative of you being here. And this just, it lights me up to be able to do this with you all. All right. Now, Pace did talk about the best way to scale is to raise money. And I am 100% convinced that the best way to be successful, the best way to scale is to leverage OPE. Who knows what that is? She's like, everything. Other people's everything. That's right. And the power of OPE is that it lets you really figure out what you're amazing at and focus on making yourself the very, very best that you can be and allowing other people, excuse me, to do the same. You can use your unique gifts and talents and focus on that, and then you can let all your other people, your OPs, focus on theirs. Truly knowing yourself, though, that's the key to growth. You've got to really get past your limiting beliefs of what it is you can or cannot achieve, and you've got to believe that you can achieve what it is that you want to achieve. And I know this sounds a little bit woo-woo coming from the lawyer, but it's important. I think it's important because actually it's going to be safer for you as well. So limiting beliefs, get rid of them. Beyond that, you also need to identify what it is you truly love and what you're amazing at. What do you excel at? And that way you can live in your heart's desire. But you've got to believe that you can have that. You've got to believe that you get to live in your heart's desire. And we're all entrepreneurs here, right? I mean, you heard Pace and AJ talking a little bit yesterday. We've got to really do a lot of work to get out of that entrepreneurial trap of I have to do everything. I have to do everything myself, right? So the goal is to figure out your lane and then stay in it, perform your superpower, and then you're going to have limitless inspiration. It's my favorite word, limitless. Well, it's one of my favorite words, but other words that are my favorite words are inappropriate for this setting. All right. So what is OPE? Other people's everything. We heard that. Growing up, it was ingrained in me by probably well-meaning adults in my life that I had to be self-reliant. I don't know if it was a conscious effort or if they were just, doing the best they could with the resources they had. And we all have that, right? Where we all have our original families that we came from, and we all adopt some beliefs, right, that were passed along to us in that. And I remember thinking, or when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I went to my dad and I asked him for help with my homework. And his response to me was, "You're a smart girl, figure it out." And that simple statement stuck with me for a really long time. That simple statement of, you're a smart girl, you can figure it out. And he was right. I was a smart girl. I did figure it out. And I had a lot of work to do to get past the fact that I always had to figure it out, right? I mean, I got good grades, and that was the goal, right? The goal was to do what was expected of me, get the achieved result that someone else laid out for me, and then do that over again and over again and over again. So I was figuring it out for myself, and I thought that the definition of success was doing the things that people expected me to do and doing it all on my own. So I thought that was a strength of mine. Up until fairly recently, I thought I've got the grit and the tenacity to dig in and figure it out myself, and I can do this all on my own without anybody else, and I'm a strong, independent woman, or Iron Man. But the truth is that you can't really scale. You can't really launch into your heart's desire if you're doing everything yourself. You heard AJ and Pace talk about this yesterday, right? They have teams all around them. They have to stay out of their way and let their teams do what their teams do in order to really achieve success. And I think we can all agree that Pace and AJ are pretty successful, yeah? Yeah. So I didn't have the confidence when I was younger to ask for help. And I mean that, like, you have to have confidence in yourself, and you have to know that you yourself are enough, that it's okay that you don't do everything. It's okay that you can't do everything. I know it's a word we don't like in here, can't, right? But we can stick to don't want to. Or my daughter used to say when she was little, I can't want to, Mama. And that's one of my favorite things to say is, I can't want to. I can't want to. So you've got to be able to ask for that help and stay in order to stay in your lane and really achieve some success. And you get to ask yourself, what is it that I'm amazing at? And what lights me up? What lights me up, right? Because in order to, achieve success, I have a hard time believing that success just means that you've achieved some goal, but you did it by being stressed out and tired and miserable and lonely, right? I mean, how many different versions of A Christmas Carol does Hallmark have to remake for us to let that one sink in, right? I mean, you don't have to be a Scrooge in order to be successful. And in fact, that's not real success. So if you get to figure out what you're amazing at and what lights you up. I was here at the reception, was it Tuesday night, I guess? And I was talking to AJ in the room, and one of the new Inner Circle members, Paul, walked up to him. Paul, where are you? There you are, Paul. Paul walked up to AJ and he said, AJ, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for putting this community together and for giving us all this information we need to build our self-storage business. I took that information and I got going right away in it. And I watched AJ's face just light up, right? He was in his power. He was in his lane. He was in his bliss, because this is what lights him up. Having this community here and giving to all of you is his lane. That is his superpower. And it lights him up. He's good at it. Okay, fine. We're all good at a lot of things and that maybe we don't love to do, but he loves it. His face lit up. Paul, his face lit up, right? He was just geeked out and talking to you. So thank you for letting me witness that. I really appreciate that. But what is that for all of you? Do you let yourself think about what it is that you're amazing at? Do you let yourself think about, what it is that lights you up? And then do you let yourself do only that? And here's the good news I have for you. I swear I am a lawyer. The good news I have for you is actually safer for you, legally speaking, to stick with what you're good at and to bring in experts for the stuff maybe you're not so great at or that you just don't love. Okay, because we can all agree that we're better at things that we love to do. All right, excuse the F-bomb on here, but this is actually what my mindset strategist and I call the magic whiteboard. The magic whiteboard, because when I do visioning with her and I put things on the magic whiteboard, they happen. They happen. And you'll see, I revisited this recently. The date on there you'll see is actually just a little bit ago. I had to revisit it because I was starting to get in the weeds and getting stressed out about some things that I was doing that I was like, this can't be it. This can't be it. I'm getting too stressed out. So we revisit it. Now, my top things are still the same. Self-perpetuating, self-sustaining freedom. Self-perpetuating, self-sustaining freedom. And what does that mean? That means that everything that I do needs to build on itself. And I want to create the kind of freedom where I can travel anywhere I want and I can work anywhere I want with whomever I want, doing whatever I want, right? It was kind of big, lofty goals. And so what we did was we created, you guys all have deal analyzers when you're deciding whether or not you want to do a deal. Hey, can we do earmuffs real quick on Colt? I have an abso-fucking-lutely meter, right? Or analyzer. If it's not an enthusiastic yes, it's got to be a no. If it does not get me to the top of that chart, then it's got to be a no. I've got to let it go because there's only so much time in the day, right? And we did this branding exercise. You heard Pace talk about branding as the thing that you say behind my back, right? And what we figured out, or anybody's back here with the brand, and we figured out that for my brand to be truly authentic and get me to these top goals, it really did have to be authentically me. There is just me. We heard them talk yesterday about about work-life balance. And actually, I don't really think that there is such a thing as work-life balance, or there needs to be if you're doing the thing that lights you up. If you're in your bliss, it should all fit together. There is just me, and for you, there's just you, and that's okay. You can own that. You build on that. And it takes a lot of practice to learn that. It's like going to the gym. You don't just learn it one time and then that's it. You've got to keep practicing and keep working on it. That's why we revisited this chart here is actually a couple of years old now, and I keep revisiting it and honing it and dialing it in. And I swear there's a point that we're going to get to here, but I thought that I just had to be the boring stoic SEC lawyer that's sitting behind my desk and doing all of the paperwork and everything in order to earn the right and the credibility to come up here and talk to you, to write a book, to do all the things that I really want to do, to host retreats. And I thought, okay, well, to satisfy the other more woo-woo parts of me, the parts where we talk about mindset on stage in front of a bunch of real estate investors, I had to set up a separate company. If I want to do retreats and I want to do the things that really my heart's desire, and helping people create conscious wealth, I had to set up a separate company. I had to keep my lawyer self and the other self, my woo-woo self, separate. But that's not authentic. That's not authentic. You meet me and you know that's not even really who I am. And then who's going to listen to somebody who can't even really be themselves, right? So I would lose credibility with all of you if I weren't actually fully in my gifts and talents, fully in my lane, right? And I think that's true. I think that's true of all of you here. So what is your abso-freaking-lutely analyzer for you? What are the things that you're going to do? And then what are you going to give to everybody else, the other people, OPE, in your field? All right, imagine, you don't really have to imagine because I put a pretty picture on here. By the way, who can smell this picture? I can actually smell this picture. Who swam ever? Yeah. So you have the competitive swimming pools, and those red and blue lines, those are the lane lines that keep the swimmers forced to swim in a semi-straight line across the pool, right? And I swam in high school. I did. And I remember swimming. I swam backstroke. And I would kind of hug the lane lines. I was not amazing. I was just average at best. I would kind of hug the lane lines, and I swam backstroke, and I would count the ceiling tiles, and I would be kind of close to the lane lines so that I wouldn't, veer off and I wouldn't kind of lose my way, right? And just imagine, first of all, it's uncomfortable when you bump them. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's really uncomfortable. But imagine how much momentum I lost when I bumped into those lines, right? I mean, it's a race. You're trying to go fast, and I'm like hugging the line, kind of, a little bit timid and unsure of myself. And the good swimmers, they wouldn't expend energy hugging the lane lines. The good swimmers, they would swim straight down the middle because they had practiced their stroke so much. They had practiced so much, their body, their mind. They knew exactly where to go. They knew exactly how hard to kick, how hard to push, how fast to breathe. They knew all of that because that was squarely their thing, right? They practiced it enough. They were amazing. And here's me. I'm like, kind of swimming on the edge of the line, just sort of timid and whatever, and not doing really all that well. But their bodies knew it, their minds knew it, right? And I remember our coach, Nathan Doctor. I can still smell his Drakkar Noir today, which tells you a little bit how old I am. And Coach Nate, he did a meditation before really big meets for us, and that was my first time ever meditating. And I would love to tell you that I had developed a good practice of meditation from that moment on, but it took me years to get there. But these meditations he would do for us. And on my very last swim meet, my senior year of high school, he did one that for whatever reason, it shook something loose in me. It really worked for me. And so the next day, I showed up at the pool and I was ready to go. I was like, I'm so focused, I'm hyped, I'm pumped, right? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. There had been this start that I didn't, I've been a little shy to try. He taught me this new start that was supposed to be faster, and I was a little timid. I did it anyway, scared to death. I did it anyway, and it was perfect. Well, it felt perfect. I don't know if it was perfect. It felt perfect. And I dive in, and I'm like, my breath is steady, and my kick is strong, and I was going as hard as I could, harder than I ever had before, and it was a 100-yard race. And so as I didn't even have to count the ceiling tiles. I just knew where the end was to do my turn. I don't know if you've ever done backstroke, but there's a wall there, and you're not looking. right? So you've got to time it right so you don't crack your head on the wall, which I had done before. This time I didn't. I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. I just knew, and I turned, and I flipped, and I came back. And as I was rounding back to the first 50 yards, I look up, and I see Coach Nate, and he's standing over the edge of the pool, and he's screaming his ever-loving head off. He's like, go, go, yes, yes. And he's like ready to jump in the pool with me. So excited. I'm like, oh, this is, I don't know if he's mad or if this is awesome, though. And now I'm pumped, right? So I'm kicking even harder, and I'm breathing even steadier, and I'm just trusting myself. Right, and I come back and I finish the race and I look up for Coach to give me his approving nod, and he was jumping for joy, and he did, but he motioned for me to look behind me because I hadn't been looking at the other swimmers. I was so focused on my race. I was so focused on my lane that I didn't look at any other swimmers. I looked back and I had well beaten everybody in the heat. Like I had time to look at him and look back and nobody was even there yet, right? Now, imagine had I been doing this the whole time, I probably would have been at a faster heat and done a faster race. But I beat my best time in 100 yards by almost 6 seconds. So the swimmers in the room, that's crazy. He's like, what? Almost 6 seconds. So I'd probably been sandbagging a lot, right? But something about, and maybe it was my last race ever, right? Because I think that I didn't have the tools for it at the time or the words for it at the time. But I think I was sort of doing that, yeah, but what if I give it my all and I still am not good enough? Who's had that? What if I give it everything I have and I still fail? Okay, but what if you don't? What if you give it your everything and your coach is screaming his head off and you have the best race of your entire life, right? But the reason that I did so well is I was focused on my lane alone. I was focused in allowing myself to be fully in the middle of my lane. I wasn't looking at what anybody else was doing. But could you imagine for a minute, I know it seems silly, but imagine if I decided that I was going to cover my 100 yards going across the pool. Right? I was going to jump over the lane lines and dodge the other swimmers, right? Imagine if I did that. First of all, it would hurt. It would hurt. It would piss off everybody else in their lanes too, right? I could still cover 100 yards eventually. I would. No one's going to win that way. The people in the other lanes aren't going to win. I'm not going to win. None of us are going to win that way. But when I stay in my lane, then I can win, right? And when you stay in your lane, then you can win. Okay, so I can't say it without, I can't say it without this song going in my head, and now it's gonna be in your heads too. So my favorite way to scale a business, same as PACE, is using OPM, other people's money. That's just one little segment of OPE, so keep in mind, you still need other people's everything, but OPM is a big one. When you bring other people's money into the mix, the rules are different. Okay, so you just need to know, actually you don't need to know. You just need to have the other people in your world who know what these rules are and how to navigate it. Now, my job, I always tell people, I joke and I say, my job is to help you practice safe SEC, right? But some of you are like, well, Bethany, what if I don't want to practice safe SEC? What if I want to abstain from SEC? Okay, that's fine. SEC isn't for everyone. That's all right. And if you are going to engage in SEC, you should be safe. One, you should only do it with someone that you trust, right? And when you're ready. So that's my job, right? Is to help you from accidentally practicing SEC when you wanted to abstain. So there are a lot of people. How many in here have done a JV? A joint venture deal? Several of you. Are you sure? My job partly is to make sure that you really are doing a JV when you didn't mean to syndicate. Remember earlier I said that the wrong question for me to ask you is whether or not you want to syndicate. That's the wrong question. What I should be asking you, because most people in here, how many of you are like, what the heck is a syndication? I don't even know. And that's okay. I'm going to tell you in a minute. What I should be asking you is, what's your goal? What do you want to accomplish? Because if I know your goal and what you want to accomplish in scaling your business, then I can help you choose which it is. And then you can navigate SEC safely one way or the other, whether you want to be involved in it or you want to abstain, right? And by the way, one of the best ways to do that is creative finance, which you guys got to hear about yesterday from PACE. All right, so what do I even mean SEC? Syndication, securities, what even is that? First of all right, this is where the law part comes in, so take a sip of your coffee real quick. All right, I appreciate you all hanging in there with me. This is the law part. The SEC is the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's a governmental body that exists to prevent investors or protect investors, in theory, from scammers. The SEC exists to protect investors from us. What? Why would it be there to protect? We're good people, right? Most of us. Maybe not that guy. You look a little shady. He's like, screw you, lady. I'm teasing you. The SEC does exist to protect investors from scammers and from people that would take advantage of them otherwise. So what you need to figure out is, how do you get protected from the SEC? That's me, right? That's largely my lane, to keep you protected from the SEC while the SEC is there protecting the investors. So much like the IRS, let's think about it. You're all familiar with the IRS, right? The IRS has a bunch of codes and regulations that are really difficult to navigate, and you could get into a big mess. And if you do it wrong, jail. Or maybe fines. But maybe jail. For real, maybe jail. So he wasn't kidding. Nate wasn't kidding when he said, how many of you want to stay out of jail? It's possible, right? You've probably all read the stories. And there's a fun website that tells you all the horrible things that people have done to get them in hot water with the SEC. So if you ever want to pour a glass of wine and have some interesting reading, you can check out some of the things that you probably won't be able to believe that people try to get away with, right? So my job, yes, is to keep you out of jail when you're using OPM, but also to help you. You don't want to even get audited, even if you've got good books. I mean, who here has been through an audit? It's okay. Don't be afraid. A few of you. Yeah, it sucks. Even if you don't come out, even if you're not in trouble in the end, it's still really stressful. It's time consuming. It takes time away from your business. So my goal is to make sure that you don't even get investigated by the SEC. But if you do, it's to survive that investigation. All right. So how do you avoid jail? With the IRS, usually you hire a CPA. I mean, you could do turbo tax, but if you have a real business, you probably shouldn't be doing your own taxes, right? Same thing with when you're using other people's money. You should not be going that alone. It's complicated. It can be scary, but it doesn't need to be scary. I'm not scared of it. And so as long as you're not scared of me, we can do this. You can use other people's money, and you can scale your business safely in whichever form you choose, right? All right. How do you abstain and still be down with OPM? Well, call Pace Morby, right? There are a lot of different things that you can do if you don't want to engage in SEC. You could do joint ventures. Make sure you do them wisely, right? Active participation by all the members. We can talk about what a security is. Actually, I skipped that part. I promised you I'd tell you what a security is, and then I didn't tell you. So a security is when you have an agreement where passive investors put up their money, and there's an expectation of a profit based on your efforts. Passive investors put up their money, and there's an expectation of profit from your efforts, right? So they're not actively involved, and they want to get a return, and you're going to do all the work, and that's great. That's awesome, but that is a security. Even if it's your Uncle Tom, right? Even if it's only $100,000, that's a security. And that's why people come to me and say, well, but it's not worth doing a whole compliance thing with the PPM and all the things for that little money. You're right, it might not be. And that's why we have to figure out other ways to get done what it is you need to get done. So what are some other things? People ask me, when we were at the Circle Live event, we did the VIP breakout session, and I got almost no questions on syndication. But I got a lot of questions on, okay, but if I don't want to do that, how do I do this? What about hard money loans? What about creative finance, debt financing, seller financing, all those things? Those actually, if you're careful, are not securities. They're not securities. There are a couple of ways to keep you out of being in the world of securities. Now, keep in mind, just because you put something in a promissory note does not mean it's not a security. The very first word in the definition of security is note. Right? So notes can be securities if not structured properly. So part of my job is to help you structure it properly. So on JVs, you want to keep a limited number of members. You want to make sure everybody's actively involved. You want to make sure that it's not really you doing all the work and then putting up the money and silently waiting for a return. Even if you have a couple people that are like, well, we don't know what we're doing, well, then you have to consider whether or not you want them in a JV with you or not, right? Everybody should have a job. Everybody should know what it is that they're doing. And by the way, you shouldn't have a whole bunch of people in a JV. It starts to look like a syndication. The number that I'm comfortable with is like around 5. That's not an SEC rule. That's just, at that point, after 5, it starts to look a little bit more like a syndication. And the way the SEC works is that almost everything is determined on a facts and circumstances basis. What does that mean? That means that an investigator with the SEC, if they're looking into something that you've done, they're going to look at all the facts and circumstances surrounding whatever it is they think you did, and then they're going to make a determination. So that means that there's not necessarily always a hard line rule that you can just follow and then necessarily be safe, which is awesome for me because it's job security. Not so awesome for you because sometimes it's hard to know what the heck you can even do. Right? So that's why I want to give you this guidance. So in a JV, you want to make sure that you don't have a whole bunch of people who really are relying on one key sponsor to do all the work, or who don't have a say in anything. Now, one of the things you can do is you can give voting rights, for example, to everybody who, let's say somebody comes in with $10 million, they're the sole person. You can give them, first of all, if they're going to put in $10 million, they're going to probably demand some voting rights, right? They're going to want to know what's going on. They're going to want to have some say. And so that can be an actual JV. What are some other things? Tenants in common. We talked about this at one of somebody, I think, we talked about this last night. Tenants in common. Tenants in common, basically, if everybody has a direct ownership in the property and also has a say with how it goes with the property, you may not be selling a security, right? So you may be abstaining, and you may be out of having to do all of the risk disclosures that are required when you do have a security. So you can still abstain and be down with OPM and scale your business without syndicating. And syndicating is really just, it's a security. Like I said, syndicating is really just a few people get together to take down a property. They do all the work. They bring passive investors in to put up the money, and then they split up the profits some way or another. And usually there's some fees involved for the folks doing all the work. That's it. That's a syndication. It's not that scary if you know how to navigate it. All right. 5 telltale signs that your JV is actually a security. So those of you that raised your hand and said you did securities, pay attention. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. We went over it a little bit. The first one is that if the operating agreement vests ultimate control in one of the parties or anybody other than the members, it starts to look like a syndication, right? So ultimate control is in somebody else besides the members who put up the money. That looks like a syndication. Thing we just said a minute ago. The LLC has so many members that it starts to look like a syndication. That magic number is 5. I've had people come to me and they're like, well, there are 12 of us that want to get together and do this deal. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Well, I mean, my uncle just wants to put up money, but he'll come to a Zoom once a month or something if I have to. And that may or may not keep you out of trouble. And again, facts and circumstances. You got to have more good facts than bad facts to make this look like a joint venture that you really are partners. Joint venture is a partnership, right? You don't have passive investors in your partnership necessarily. The JV partners might lack enough knowledge to reasonably have a say or a role or voting, and they really would have to be passive because they just don't even know what the heck they're doing, and that's okay, but that is a security, right? Number 4, I covered a lot of these before. Number 4 is that the whole group is relying really on 1 or 2 sponsors to do everything. Right, they're signing on the loan. They're underwriting the whole deal. They picked the deal. They're managing the deal. They're doing the diligence. They're doing the asset management. All the things. That's going to look a lot more like a security if a few people again are just putting up their money. And number 5, and this one's really important because I get this one a lot, is there is a management fee and a carried interest. Who knows what carried interest means? Because you don't all do in syndications. That's good. So carried interest, a management fee, first of all, is just a fee for doing the work of running this deal. A carried interest is when you get a profits interest, right, from the deal. So it would be in a syndication situation, for example, we a lot of times see like an 80-20 split. And what does that mean? That means 80% of the profit goes to the people who put up the money. 20% of the profits go to the people doing the work. Well, why would you get that if you're all partners, right? So it starts to look, again, like a syndication. So you just want to be careful of how you structure the deal. So what if you are actually selling securities? What if this is really a syndication? Well, you have 3 options. The first option is that you register that security. Think Facebook, Microsoft, public offerings, right? You can register that security. Well, usually in a real estate situation, that's not a viable option. It's expensive. It takes a long time. It's usually going to take a lot longer than the 45 days you have to close, right? And it's just expensive. So most people in this room are not going to be doing public offerings for a real estate syndication. Number 2 then is finding an exemption. Finding an exemption from registration. You may have heard of Regulation D, 506B and 506C. Those are the primary exemptions that people in this room are under. Now, you heard Pace talk. He's doing a Reg CF. That's a little bit different. And Grant Cardone does Reg A+. That's also a little bit different. But most people, when you start off, you're going to be in Reg D. Number 3, it's illegal. That's it. You've got the really one option then. So we're going to go with option B. And the 506B versus 506C, again, is where most people live. So what are those? I'll give you really high level because I see most of you in here are not syndicating now. And keep in mind, by the way, that if you decide this is the road you want to go down or you're trying to figure it out, I do a free live every single week where you can come on and ask questions specifically about securities or syndication or whatever. And we have a lot of students come on there to learn while they're out looking for deals, trying to decide if they're going to syndicate or not. So don't stress out about the fact that you might not know yet. There are free resources out there that can help you decide, right? And I'm happy to do that because I think it's a lot better to give out the education and have a really well-educated community rather than have people accidentally practicing unsafe SEC. So we do that for the safety of our whole community. 506B is the one where you can take up to 35 non-accredited investors, but sophisticated, up to 35 non-accredited but sophisticated investors. However, you cannot generally solicit or advertise the offering. Nothing on Facebook, no email blasts, not at an event like this, nothing. You have to really have a close, substantial, pre-existing relationship with everybody that you bring in to the deal. Okay. 506C is the one you can advertise. You can shout it from the rooftops. I can tell you about it from stage, whatever it is, 506C. However, I could only take then accredited investors, and I need to take reasonable steps to verify that they are in fact accredited. Okay. All right. What does accredited investor mean? I know that's what you're all thinking. Who was that? Who was like, what the hell does that even mean, Bethany? Yeah. Accredited investors are investors that earn $200,000 or more a year for the last 2 years and reasonably expected in the same year, or $300,000 if you want to count your spouse. Or you have a net worth of $1 million or more, excluding your primary residence. Otherwise, everybody who owns a home in California is automatically accredited, and that's not necessarily true, right? So excluding your primary residence and net worth of more than $1 million. There has been some talk of increasing these numbers. It's not happened yet. I don't know when or if it will. But for now, these are the definitions for accredited. All right, things to remember here. You are the boss. You get to decide if you want to have SEC or not. You get to decide. But if you don't like the circumstances, then you can change your facts. If you're looking at a JV and you're like, this does not make sense for me to syndicate, this is not enough money, it's not a big enough deal, it's just a few of us, that's fine. You can change your facts, and then we can structure it into a JV, right? You get to decide. However, you don't get to decide just by saying, well, I don't want to syndicate, I want to do a JV. Well, it's not really up to you, it's up to the facts. So we just work with your facts, right? And that's not as hard to do as it might seem if you have the right OPs. Who likes free stuff? Everyone, Nate, everyone likes free stuff. Look here. What? You want to practice safe SEC or figure out if you're not practicing safe SEC? There's a free guide here for all of you. And the thing I want to tell you too is remember, we can probably put it in something, I don't know, but if you go to bethanylaflam.com/live, that's the free live every week that I do on Wednesdays at 1 Pacific. You're all welcome to join. You do not have to be clients or even think you're going to become clients to join. It's not a sales thing. It's just a Q&A. So I invite you all to join me on that. I think I went over, so I don't think I have time for questions. However, if you did put questions in the Hoova app for me, I saw a few, I will go in there and answer them, right? So if you have questions for me, put them in the Hoova app, and I'll go in there and I'll answer them. Or if you want to join me live on Wednesdays, I can answer them live there as well. So I think I went over, I apologize, but I thank you all for your time and attention, and especially I know this topic is kind of heavy, so I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me.